Hey, how's it guys? Right, so OpenAI finally released ChatGPT model today called GPT 3.5 Turbo. And I'm super excited to be honest. So unlike the regular DaVinci model that was like a search engine, you provide input and the model will respond with an output. The ChatGPT model was more like a conversation, and which I'll show you in a second. For this video, I'm going to show you how to get started with working with OpenAI ChatGPT API in Python. Now, before I dive into the tutorial, I want to cover the pricing first, and that's going to be one of the important aspects when it comes to using a service. So the ChatGPT model is going to be, like I said before, it's going to be this GPT 3.5 Turbo model, and this model costs 0.002 cents per 1,000 tokens, which is a lot cheaper than the DaVinci model from the 3.0 model that costs 2 cents per 1,000 tokens. So unlike the 3.0 GPT models, in which you can set a token limit on how much tokens per API can consume, with the GPT 3.5 Turbo model, basically this API doesn't have a token limit. So whatever the API returns is going to be whatever the tokens that it's going to use. So for example, let's say if I provide a prompt, and based on the prompt that the API returns, let's say 10,000 characters. And based on that API code, it's going to cost you the 10,000 tokens usage and cannot set a limit cap, unfortunately. And I think that's one of the reasons why OpenAI decided to make the model a lot cheaper than the 3.0 GPT models. Now, the next thing I want to go over is the model itself. Right, so if we go into the documentation, and which I'll link the link in the description below. And here's the newly added the GPT 3.5 model on this model list. And if you look at the description, so the GPT 3.5 model is a set of models that improve on GPT-3 and can understand as well as generate natural language or code. And if I click into the GPT 3.5 model, now from this GPT 3.5 table right here, notice that here we have this GPT 3.5 Turbo -0301. So this model right here uses the training data up to March 1st, 2023. So if you're interested in getting the latest update, then you can use this 0301 GPT 3.5 Turbo model. And just keep in mind that this model is going to expire on June 1st, 2023. And for demonstration purpose, I'll be using this regular GPT 3.5 Turbo model. Now with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so first I want to sign up for an OpenAI account by going to openai.com. Then click on menu. Then click on sign up. So make sure that you sign up for an account. And as a new user, you get $18 of credit to use, but the credit is going to expire after 3 months. So just keep that in mind. And once you sign up for an account, let me log into my account first. Now, once you sign up for an account, you want to click on your username. Then click on View API Keys. Now, here you want to create a new set of secret key, and that's basically your API key. Now, make sure that you save the API key somewhere safe. But for demonstration purpose, I'm going to save the API key in my Python script. All right, so here in my demo.py file, I'm going to create a variable called API key, and I'll paste the OpenAI API key here. Now we need to install the OpenAI Python package before we can connect to the endpoint or use the API. All right, so here let me launch my terminal. And to install the OpenAI Python package, it's really easy. You simply type pip install OpenAI, enter. And once you install the OpenAI Python package, in your Python script, we want to import the OpenAI Python package. Now, the first thing we want to do here is we want to attach the API key to the OpenAI module. So here I'm going to type OpenAI.API key, and I'll attach the API key. Next, I'm going to create a variable to specify the model ID, and it's going to be GPT-3.5-turbo. So as I mentioned before, ChatGPT API works a little bit differently from the regular GPT 3.0 models. And the reason being is because when it comes to working with ChatGPT API, we are kind of like having a conversation, basically. Here I'm going to insert a function, and I'll name the function ChatGPT underscore conversation. And I'll name the parameter conversation. Now, if we look at the Python code that make out this ChatGPT conversation function, so basically we'll reference the OpenAI library. Then we'll use the chat completion model. And here I'll supply the model ID, which is the GPT 3.5 turbo model. Then we have this messages parameter. So basically we have a conversation log. And we're going to pass the conversation log to this function to keep adding the conversation records. And from this API code, I'm going to name the output response for now. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to copy this code block here. And I'll do it once manually. Then you can see how the API works. Right, so here I'm going to create a list. And I'll name the list conversation. So when you're working with ChatGPT API, you are going to provide a row and a content. And content is basically your initial question or your initial prompt. And row is going to be used to determine if the input is coming from a user or from the system itself. And from the API, we have three different rows: system, assistant, and user. So user row will be yourself, basically the person who is typing the input. And system row is going to trigger the conversation. So whenever you start a new session, you always start with the system row. And when we are going to pass the message, we always need to pass the message as a list. Now let's look at an example. So here I'm going to run these two lines to create the conversation list. And let me import the OpenAI module, and I'll initiate the function as well. All right, so let's go back to this create method. Now, if we look at the conversation record, right now it's a list. Inside this list, I have one record. In this record, which is a dictionary, we have a row and the content, and that's basically my prompt. Now, if I go ahead and run the create method to make the API call. All right, so here's saying that the model doesn't exist. Take a look. Now I'll go back to the create method. Now here, if I run this create function, now if I print the response option, all right, so here we have the API created date, the model ID. And I guess right now, ChatGPT 3.5 is going to use the 0301 model by default, because I remember I set the model ID as the regular GPT 3.5 turbo model. And usage is going to be the total tokens that you have consumed. So if I'm using GPT 3.0 model, the API is going to set a token limit to 16 tokens from the completion token usage. But right now with the GPT 3.5 turbo model, there's no token usage limit. Actually, there is. So the maximum usage limit is going to be 4,096 tokens. So if your request exceed the 4,096 tokens usage, in that case, it's going to tell you that from the finish reason, it's going to return continue for the finish reason. And that means that there's additional content that needs to be retrieved. Now I want to focus on the most important part from this response object, and which is this choice key. Let me print the choice key from the print statement, and it's going to be choices, not choice. Now if we look at the response, so we're getting a list. Inside this list, we have the message index, the message content, which is going to be the response from your prompt. And here the role updated to assistant, meaning that you are in a conversation with the AI. And just one very important concept. When you run this query method, you are only going to get one message record back. And this is a very important thing to remember. So unlike the regular GPT 3.0 models, the API can return multiple responses. With the ChatGPT model, you can only return one message or one response at a time. Now, to retrieve the row and the content, so from the choices response, we can always reference the last element, and which is going to be -1. And we can reference the message attribute dot row, and this one will be message dot content. And I'll go ahead and run these 2 lines. And here's the assistant row, followed by the message itself. So to check the composition, so basically, this is what I did. All right, so first we're going to create a list, and it's going to be the composition tracker. Then we're going to initialize the composition by setting the row assistant, followed by the question that I want to ask ChatGPT. Now, to continue the composition, I'm going to call the ChatGPT composition function, and I'll pass the composition list. Now, inside the ChatGPT composition function, I'm printing the message index, finish reason, and the total token usage. I don't want to append those things to the composition list. I want to keep the composition list as clean as possible. So this line here is going to append the message record to the composition argument. And here I can update the composition list to make sure that I have the last record appended to the composition list. All right, so let me take a look. All right, so the composition list right now is empty. I'm going to run these 2 lines to create my initial prompt. Then I'm going to run the ChatGPT composition function. So this prompt used 195 tokens. And stop means that the API has successfully returned all the content into this API call. Now, if I print this print statement, which is going to print the row and the last composition record. And here's the content returned from the API call, which is going to be the content response. Now, to follow up on this composition, so basically we want to append another question to this composition list. So here let me insert my code. So let's say I want to follow up on the second item from the response. So I'll basically append the role as user, meaning that this prompt is coming from a user. And for the content, I'm going to say, can you be more specific on item number 2? Now I'm going to append this message to the composition list. And I'll call the ChatGPT composition function again. And if I want to retrieve the response, so insert the same print statement. So this is going to retrieve the last record from the composition list. And I want to retrieve the row and the content response. Now, if we look at the response, so basically my follow-up question was, can you be more specific on item number 2? And from the output here, so we can see that ChatGPT API is able to provide additional information based on the follow-up question that I asked. And if I want to read to the composition records, so basically we know it's a list, so we can insert a loop. So we can say let's do for record in composition. And I'll simply print the row and content. And I'll insert an empty line between each message record. All right, so if I print this loop, actually that's not good because some of the response have empty lines. If we look at the loop response, so basically I'm printing the entire conversation into a single output right here. So one thing I forgot to cover was how should we modify the code to keep the conversation running like on ChatGPT. And to modify the code, so here I'm going to insert my code snippet to replace everything. All right, so basically I'm going to start the session with the system role. And for the content, it's going to be, how may I help you? Basically, this is going to start engaging the conversation from the beginning. Then I'm going to insert the while true loop to keep the process of the conversation running non-stop. The input is going to be the input prompt. So basically, you're going to type your questions or your prompt into this input statement. Then it's going to save the string into this prompt variable. Then we're going to append the prompt to the content key, and this is going to be your message. And we'll set the role as user. Then we'll run the ChatGPT conversation function to send our request. And once we get the response back, we're going to append the message to the conversation list. Now I'm going to terminate this session. And I'm going to press F5 to run the script. All right, so here I forgot to update the API key. All right, so let me try again. I'm going to press F5. Now here's going to be the Python program that you are going to work with. Here, let me take out the print statement, because when you are building a program, this should be go to the bottom. But I'm going to take out the print statements for now. All right, so let me try again. All right, so here we go. Now, assuming that this is a command line tool, and with this program, we're going to start with, I am an AI language model, and I can help you with a variety of tasks, such as answering questions, providing information, generating text, making recommendations, playing games, and so on. I want to know who won the NBA final in 1992. And it's going to return Chicago Bulls. Then we can continue with the prompt, and I can ask a follow-up question. What was the final score in Game 6? And because all our conversations are saved in a list, so ChatGPT API is able to go back to the previous records and reference my previous question. Right, so this is going to be everything I'm going to share in this video. And feel free to post your question or your feedback in the comment section below. And if you find this video useful, please don't forget to give this video a like and click on the subscribe button. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.